Hello everyone, it's Hannah here from Virtually Fluent. Today we're looking at a pretty complicated grammar topic, which is quantifiers. Quantifiers are little words that provide a quantity, well, a rough quantity, and we're going to learn how to use these with different types of nouns. Singular, plural, countable and uncountable. So it's really important that you already understand what countable and uncountable nouns are and how the singular and plural noun rules work in English too. So let's get started with some pretty complicated quantifiers. So quantifiers can be used for different types of nouns. They can be used to give a zero quantity, a quantity of one, small quantity, large quantity, and unknown quantity. So today we're going to learn the quantifiers using this method. And when we learn quantifiers, we need to know what types of nouns they work with. Do they work with singular or plural nouns? Do they work with countable or uncountable nouns? And we also have a special long form for long questions and answers and a short form. So there's so much information that we need to learn. We're going to start by using a quantifier to say that there is zero quantity of something. So let's start with a singular countable noun, for example, a banana. If we want to say the quantity of bananas in this fridge is zero, we would say there isn't a banana in the fridge. So we use the indefinite article a before banana and our verb is negative. There isn't a banana in the fridge. Remember, we also have that little special rule that if a noun begins with a vowel sound, for example, apple, we don't say at, we say an. So in this case, there isn't an apple in the fridge. However, if the noun is plural, for example, tomatoes, we continue with a negative verb, aren't, but now we need to say any. Instead, there aren't any tomatoes in the fridge. However, we do have an alternative method. We can use the word no, but our verb must be affirmative. Quite confusing. There are no tomatoes in the fridge. Now, luckily for uncountable nouns, it's exactly the same as plural nouns. But remember, our verb isn't plural. For example, there isn't any yogurt in the fridge, or there is no yogurt in the fridge. So far we've learned this information here. Singular countable nouns are a or an with a negative verb. Plural countable nouns have two options, either no plus an affirmative verb or any plus a negative verb, and uncountable nouns are exactly the same. But so far we've learned all of these long sentences. They're all pretty long. Imagine if somebody asks us the question, how many bananas are in the fridge? Or how much yogurt is in the fridge? We want to answer with one short, concise word. So our short response would be none. How much yogurt is in the fridge? None. How many tomatoes are in the fridge? None. So now we have both our long and short forms for zero quantity. Next, we want to move on to a quantity of one, and you should already know this because these are the rules of indefinite articles. Now, because there's only a quantity of one, we're only going to have singular and countable nouns. For example, a pineapple, there is a pineapple in the fridge. So we've got an affirmative verb because the quantity of one exists, and we use the indefinite article a. And as I said before, remember that if our noun begins with a vowel sound, for example, avocado, then we need to use the indefinite article an instead. There is an avocado in the fridge. So remember, if it starts with a consonant sound, we use a. If it starts with a vowel sound, we use an. And again, what happens if we want a short response? Just one individual word. How many pineapples are in the fridge? How many avocados are in the fridge? We can use just the word one. So now we have both our long and short forms for a quantity of one. So now we're starting to get into the slightly more difficult words, and we're going to look at a small quantity. We use quantifiers because we don't tend to have a specific number, which is why some people don't often count the zero quantity and the quantity of one, the indefinite articles, as quantifiers. So a lot of teachers disregard that. I've just put those in this video to help you understand what the differences are. So let's get started with some small quantities. Remember, if it's a small quantity, it's not going to be singular. It's going to be plural because it's small. It's bigger than one. So let's take a countable noun, which is lemons. As you can see in the fridge, there are some lemons. Now, the quantifier that we use here is a few, and we need an affirmative verb. There are a few lemons in the fridge. But there is an alternative way of saying this. We can say many, but our verb must be negative. There aren't many lemons in the fridge. There are a few lemons in the fridge. There aren't many lemons in the fridge. Both exactly the same, just don't mix up those verbs. But if our noun is uncountable, we use a different expression. We can say there is a little chocolate in the fridge. We use a little with an affirmative verb, or we use much with a negative verb. There isn't much chocolate in the fridge. So if it's a plural countable noun, affirmative verb with a few, or negative verb with many. And if it's an uncountable noun, affirmative verb with a little, or negative verb with much. Now, the short responses for these words are slightly different. If we're asking about a plural countable noun, all we do is reduce those words. So we say a few, or not many. How many lemons are in the fridge? A few, or not many. And if we ask about an uncountable noun, we would respond a little, or not much. How much chocolate is in the fridge? A little, or not much. So now we have our summary of small quantities for plural countable nouns or uncountable nouns. Now we want to move on to a large quantity, and there's quite a few different expressions we could use. Let's start with our plural countable nouns, for example, strawberries. Now, one word we could use is several. And here we do need an affirmative verb. For example, there are several strawberries in the fridge. Alternatively, we could use a number of. There are a number of strawberries in the fridge, also affirmative. Now, when it comes to an uncountable noun, we need different expressions. We could say a great deal of. For example, there is a great deal of butter in the fridge. Alternatively, there is a large amount of butter in the fridge. So those are our nice long forms that we can use for the specific nouns using a big quantity. But luckily, there are some words we can use for both. It doesn't matter if it's a plural countable noun or an uncountable noun. For example, plenty of. There are plenty of strawberries. There is plenty of butter. We can also say a lot of. There are a lot of strawberries. There is a lot of butter. And a slightly more informal word, lots of. There are lots of strawberries. There is lots of butter. So we can use those three expressions with all nouns. Maybe it's a little bit easier to use those. You don't have to think about the grammar. So these are all the long forms. What about the short forms? So you can see all the long ones written here. The only problem is we can never end a sentence in English with a preposition. And a lot of these expressions have of in them. So all we're going to do is eliminate those ofs. Several is okay because it doesn't have a preposition. And now we have our short response answers. So if I ask the question, how many strawberries are there? Remember, that's a plural countable noun, so we can only use those appropriate responses. We could say several, or plenty, or a lot. And if I ask about an uncountable noun, how much butter is there? A great deal, a large amount, plenty. So now we have both our long and short form responses for large quantities of nouns. Now there's one more expression which I've written here as an unknown quantity, because when we use these, it doesn't really tell us if it's a large or a small quantity. And this is when we use the word some, but luckily it's exactly the same for plural countable nouns and uncountable nouns. There are some strawberries in the fridge. There is some butter in the fridge. And of course, that's our nice long phrase. If somebody asks us these questions, we want a nice short, snappy response, which is just the word some. How many strawberries are in the fridge? Some. How much butter is in the fridge? Some. Now, the final thing that I need to note is that when we're using all of these quantifiers from today in their long form, they're going to be immediately before the noun. But if we use the short form, it's just going to be alone as an individual response to a question. So quantifiers can be quite difficult words to use in English, and ensuring that the verb form is correct with them, they're in the correct position in the sentence. If you would like to practice these a little bit more, there is an entire quantifiers course on our website with some quizzes and self-study activities just to really help you with this topic. And if you learned something new today, you can go ahead and give this video a like. Of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to turn those notifications on, because then you can see lots more videos just like this one with other grammar, pronunciation and vocabulary explanations. This is Hannah from Virtually Fluent, bringing English to life.